Okay, so we're done expositing Aquinas' natural law theory. I want to raise some questions about it now. One question you may be asking is about the role of God in his theory. Now, he's a monk, he's an important theologian. You might think, well, this is a purely religious, God-dependent theory of morality. In other words, you might think, well, Aquinas is a divine command theorist. And actually, it seems that Aquinas is not a divine command theorist. Um, God does play a role, but it's kind of an incidental role in his moral theory. Not incidental, that's overstating it, but one that his theory would work even if there is no God. God's role in the theory is simply to create humans with a certain nature and certain natural inclinations. Given that they have that nature, the natural law then follows automatically. Even God, though, could not have created us with the nature we have and yet also have given us a different natural law. That would be a contradiction in terms. It's our nature and not some divine command that dictates what we ought to do and ought not to do in terms of the natural law. In fact, if there were no God, but humans existed and had the same nature that they do now with the same natural inclinations, then morality would still be in place. Morality could do without God. So even an atheist who believed in human nature and this view of human nature could hold Aquinas' natural law theory. And this is actually, and you certainly don't need to know anything about Aquinas' Christian convictions or the Bible in order to get behind his natural law theory. It's supposed to be entirely independent and not based upon his Christian theology. It's supposed to be consistent with Christianity, and he thinks it is, but it's not supposed to be dependent upon it. And this is a feature, not a bug of the system. It's a benefit of his system because Aquinas believes that human reason, all by itself, without any help from revelation, can figure out the truth about the world, much truth about the world, and about morality, and even prove a lot of things about God just by using reason and philosophy without drawing in church tradition or anything like that. Now, he also thinks that reason will then prove to you, if you use it correctly, that there is a God and that God has revealed himself through through Jesus and through the Bible and through church tradition. And that then you can build on top of what reason gives you another story of knowledge based on revelation. And hey, you learn from the Bible a whole bunch of other stuff about the world and about God. But that's a second story. And it's a second layer on top of what philosophy all by itself, even without presupposing anything about God, can give you. The moral theory is supposed to be freestanding and not dependent upon claims about God, only about human nature and reason. So he's not a divine command theorist. It's not as though God's commands, God says, thou shalt do this and thou shalt not do this, and that's what makes things right or wrong. That's not it at all. It's human nature that dictates what's right or wrong. So that's a point of clarification. Now I want to raise three questions that critics might raise about the natural law theory. First is, how do we know which things are good and evil? How do we know which actions are right actions? And is practical rationality the same thing as morality? Let's start with the first one. How do we know which things are good? Now, that is good for creatures like us, pursuit worthy. According to natural law theory, we're just naturally inclined towards good things and we naturally, rationally apprehend that they are good. So when we're violating the natural law, when we're doing something that's morally wrong, in other words, we're doing one of two things. Either we're following unnatural inclinations, for example, we're unnaturally seeking our own destruction, or we are, on his view, it would be unnatural to pursue same-sex relations. We're either doing something like that, or we're pursuing natural inclinations, but in an irrational way. So maybe, I'm trying to preserve my life, but I'm doing it in a stupid way. Somehow I think like, oh, it's going to be good for me if I stop eating vegetables and only eat, raw meat. I know some people get into that kind of diet. I'm telling you, it's irrational. That's Sasserson. Anyway, so we could be doing that, pursuing a natural end, but in a stupid way. So that's what happens when you go wrong. But here's the question this raises. If some of our inclinations are natural and some of them are unnatural, how do we know which is which? How do we know which things are really pursuit worthy, therefore? We could take the one that's really sensitive and up for grabs, I think, is same-sex relations. A lot of people think, look, this is a really strong desire for me, an inclination. What's in it? I had all my life. What's unnatural about that? It seems as natural as anything to me, as natural as heterosexual people experience their inclinations. So how do we arbitrate between those two claims? If we got a conflict about which inclinations are natural and which aren't, how do we know which is which? Or if I really hate vegetables. Wait, that's not a good one. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back to the self-preservation principle. Yeah, what if you have some people who really don't want to keep on living, and that feels like a very natural inclination to them? How do we arbitrate between the natural and the unnatural? Is it just like majority rules, whatever most people tend to do, or what? So the natural law theory says that an action is right only if it's directed towards the good and away from evil. So let's take an action like this. Working a job to make money to educate my offspring at a good college, that might be a means to the end of educating my offspring. That's one way to do it. I'm pursuing a natural end, education of my offspring, and I'm doing it in a rational way. But not every act that we do to obtain good things is necessarily a right action, right? What if I rob a bank to get money to pay to educate my offspring at a good college? Which many people feel that's pretty much the point we're at right now, given the cost of college, not at Greenville Tech, but other places. You got to rob a bank. That seems like it would be wrong to rob a bank, right? I mean, armed robbery, that's not a good thing. So here's what the question it raises is, how do I know that working the job to make the money is really the most rational and right thing to do versus robbing a bank if I can get away with it? I mean, they might seem equally rational, or maybe the robbing the bank even seems more rational and therefore more right. What's the rule for determining the right ways and the wrong ways of pursuing the good? What is it? And then finally, here's the last objection. It's the relationship of practical rationality to morality. The natural law tells us how we can flourish. That is, how we can fulfill our own proper acts and ends. But is that the same thing as acting morally? Is the rational pursuit of my own flourishing really the same thing as doing what's right? Can you conceive of any possible situation in which my flourishing might be at odds with doing what's morally right? That seems possible. So that's a question that gets raised. Now, all of these questions here are genuinely questions. Aquinas has thought about a lot of things, and I think that he might have the resources to answer these. So homework for you is to think about how would or how might a natural law theorist respond to these challenges? Or, on the other hand, are they insoluble challenges and the theory's no good? So I'll leave you to think about that. Hope you sort it out.